We're going to get started in about 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, come on. We can figure this out. Come on, team.
Okay. So then I say
Now, I'm going to do this slightly. Is that okay?
maybe front row seat, teacher's pet. By the way, that woman really changed everything. She came in April as a bungee from apps, and essentially everything that we've done last year was me.
The world is a better place. We're on. I'm waiting for a thumbs up from Lauren. No,
Thumbs down.
that was thumbs down. Shut up, Ronan.
Also, I finally met Lino, because you might have heard he's not in the regional split, and now as we're back. So the theme for International Women's Day this year is Each for Equal. And we're all responsible for our own actions and thoughts, but it's through allyship that we come together to celebrate our differences and bring each other up and strive for equality. So on that note of allyship, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ronan Harris, who is the exec sponsor for Women at Google in the UK, who's going to lead a panel discussion with our fabulous guests on allyship.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you. Hi, yeah, so I'm Ronan and MD of Google in the UK, and proud to call myself an ally of Women At. I went through a rigorous selection process. Hannah is in the room somewhere. She interviewed me and calibrated me with her colleagues, and I was very proud to then be asked to be the exec sponsor for Women At. And I think it's important to kind of ask, well, why? You know, was this just a box to tick for Ronan? Or was there something else behind it? We had been having a conversation within the company about the importance of allyship. And I had heard directly from some colleagues who told me about the impact that allyship had had on their own personal journey. And I felt that was important. I have been myself in situations where I felt very much like the odd one out. And when you've got somebody who can turn around and just put an arm around you from time to time and tell you that you're headed in the right direction, it feels good. I'm also the father of a 10-year-old daughter who just turned 10 and got her ears pierced, much to my and you know, as I was learning about International Women's Day and the 110-year journey that it's been on, I'm thinking, oh my God, Cara is going to be hitting the workforce probably in another 10 years' time, and I need to put my shoulder to the wheel and see what I can do to help. So today is going to be a conversation about allyship and what can each of us do in order to be allies, in order to help others be allies as well, because I would consider myself somewhat of a novice on the journey of being an ally to Women At, and continue to learn along the way. So first of all, thanks to all of you for being here today. These events are a hugely important part of the conversation that hopefully leads to improvement and change, and us all making the world a better place. But today is about hearing from our panelists. And I'm delighted to welcome some old friends. And rather than me making the introductions, I'm going to ask each of you, and we'll start with Rahel, to maybe give me your name and give me the elevator pitch on your company, and maybe if you consider yourself to be an ally of anybody and why.
Hi guys. Oh, is this working? Hello. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. So my name is Rahel.
heter Heltes Vai, and that sounded like James Bond, by the way. So what I'm building is it's a booking platform for black hair. And I'll tell you more later as to kind of the story behind it. But imagine Treatwell for the black woman. I do consider myself an ally. I consider myself, I think, first of all, everyone can be allies. I consider myself allies, if you're, a man, allies to women. If you're a white female, to a black female, able-bodied, to someone, of less ability. And me, I'm an ally of refugees, for example. So my background is, I was a refugee coming to Sweden, growing up there, at the age of 4. And, I'm obviously no longer, a refugee. I'm more like, Swedish immigrant to the UK and so on. But I help out at a coding school for, to get refugees into the workforce. Code Your Future is called. So, yeah, I consider myself an ally to refugees.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shadi. We've built Pexi, a personalized medicine platform for women. We start with personalizing oral contraceptives based on hormone levels, genetic profiles, mental health, and medical history. I consider myself an ally of women in tech. So 2 of my very good friends actually run 2 communities supporting women in technology, connecting them with sort of thought leaders, men or women, and sort of trying to work on their mindsets and help them grow. So that's what I consider myself an ally of.
Right. Brilliant. Hi, I'm Marta, a fellow Googler, and can I just say thank you so much, Women At, and thank you, Ronan, and thank you, ladies. By the way, I've had a pleasure of working with them for over 6 months, and sort of highlight of my life. But yes, I head up Google for Startups UK. Who has never been to campus before? Oh, a fair few. Well, I hope this is going to be your new favorite spot, because also in this building, Women's Day is not just once a year, it's every day. So yes, we're sort of really happy. Ladies have been part of our Women Founders Residency last year, and we just yesterday, we launched another cohort of founders, women founders, 10 companies that are doing amazing things. Allyship is why I took this job. I'd been a founder for 13 years of 3 companies, mostly in fintech, and that means I spent my life with old white men. And what was really powerful for me is to see that every time I'd go to an event or through a founding journey, that either I was the only woman in the room or the only women that I saw around me were white and well-educated and privileged. And I think that sort of conversation about privilege was really important, which is why when Google came knocking and said, do you want to support startups with the power of Google? But which startups, I asked? Oh, the ones that you think are doing something right in the world and are going to make Google values come to shine. I was like, okay, brilliant. And off the back of this was all of the work for women and founders. I consider myself an ally of everyone that isn't a cis, straight, white woman who's able-bodied, and it really is. It's gay women, it's women of color, it's women with disabilities, it's generally people that don't have the level of privilege that I do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here. We're going to dig more into each of your stories in a few minutes. But in my role as the exec sponsor of Women At, we've been having a conversation about gender equality in the company for a number of years now. I think we are making some progress in some areas, but not enough overall. And I'm very keen to learn what others are doing that might be successful in this pursuit. And I'm keen to hear from each of you as to what have you seen others do that's helping promote the interests of and look after the interests of underrepresented communities. It could be gender-based, it could be other communities, but what's working that you've seen?
Should I start?
Please.
So I would actually say my first case was Marta. Like I genuinely believe in, so Marta always says everything is about mindset, right? Our society is a bit broken, unfortunately, because from a very young age, and I genuinely believe in this, that the things that we tell our girls are different to the things that we tell our boys. So really what Google for Startups has done, especially in their female cohort program, is that they give you the tools to challenge all of these mindsets, which is essentially something that you will have to do, like the remarkable workshop that you guys did. Like, it's a practice that you would need to do every day. Every day go, okay, what did I learn when I was growing up? Was it right? Was it not right? And so I think really learning from that in my own company, we are constantly promoting a growth mindset, like challenging our own mindset, growing, questioning things. And how do we build a culture not only for men, because then they have the opposite mindset as well. Like, they have the mindset of, oh, we're boys, so we can do everything, but girls can't. So it's really a two-way street that needs to be challenged all the time. So I would say my real first case was sort of seeing Martha, and how she deals with us is amazing, because she makes us feel quite empowered, and that's something that no one really does out there in the world. So yes, so that.
And Charlie, you talk about, you try and practice growth mindset within your business. Can you give me a couple of practical, what does that look like?
So I'm a believer that coaches are sort of the right ones are actually really effective. So we are, as part of sort of our talking to investors, we're like, this is an area where we really care about, and therefore we want money to be allocated in that area. So not only the founders, but the whole team can actually get access to understanding those kind of mindsets, to then not only help grow the company, but grow themselves, because better individuals also build better products and better societies.
That's great. So everybody in the company has a coach?
Well, that's what we're aiming
that's
for.
That's the aspiration. That's great.
So I think it's very important to be woke. And what I mean is, kind of recognize, inequality and inequity between those with privilege and those without. And, when it comes to allyship, it's very, you can't say that you're an ally and be passive. You got to be active. You have to, think critically about, everyday situations in your life. I think unconscious bias training is quite important. So, companies who empower their employees to actually speak up. Because, a lot of people don't recognize bias. And even if they do, they don't always speak up. And also, I think, don't be, don't just, show up saying, I'm an ally, just in front of, the underrepresented person. But I think it's also very important to, when you're in a closed room, be an ally, speak up for that person. And I think, the McKinsey report about women in the workplace, it says there about, Black women not, having, equal opportunities for advancement. They have less support from their managers. They often feel, excluded, and not included, and also more likely to quit. I keep going on here, but and I have a good example of this. My sister, she handed in her notice last week. She'd been working for this massive hedge fund for the past 7 years. In these 7 years, she was the only Black woman in that entire department. And I mean, see, I grew up in a small town in Sweden, and it's okay there to be the only Black person because there weren't many Black people around. But if you're in a city as diverse as in London, that is not okay. And, often she felt excluded and overlooked, especially when it came to, promotions or, getting a salary increase and so on. And, she had no allies. She had no one that kind of spoke up for her. No one were, in her corner. So she quits. It's mentally, it's draining, to be the only one all the time.
Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's very true. If you don't have somebody who you think has got your back, and if you don't see anybody who has trodden the path before you, it can feel like very lonely. And the research is all saying that if you want to retain great talent and keep diversity in your organization, you've got to make sure that people can see the path in front of them. So thank you for sharing that. Marta, you've been cited as having all sorts of great talents in this area of helping to be an ally. What's your secret?
Yeah, I don't. Well, if I knew the secret, I'd be out in the world. I mean, actually, I hope I am in the world, trying to do something about it. I think it's a plethora of things, and it spans all parts of the organizations, and both in startups or in larger companies. I guess obviously there's a big conversation about recruitment. Like just give people jobs or give people money. And I will quote somebody. I think this is live streamed, and I don't think I should swear, but I will. Somebody very important to me said one day that she's very cross. She's actually, she's a black woman herself, and she's very cross, talking about black women empowerment. She was like, just give us fucking money and fucking jobs. And I think that's really, really true. That. So recruitment, and this doesn't necessarily mean not hiring white men. This means making sure that you have as diverse a pipeline as you can and interviewing as many diverse candidates as you can possibly reach. And if at this point the white man in question or somebody else who's got more privilege is still better, then fair enough, give them the job. But really, I mean, it takes work. And for as long as certain groups are excluded or underrepresented, it's just going to take them this much more time to even get into your inbox and into your pipeline. So that's really important. The other thing that I've seen, especially in the work with startups, is representation on boards. If there aren't women, and again, diverse women, so not just women from certain socioeconomic backgrounds that are on those boards, that it's very hard to believe for women that they'll be able to ascend to that place if there isn't a female board member, if there isn't an MD, if there isn't anyone in the C-suite. It's sort of that story that Rahel says, at some point we're going to withdraw the gift of our talent from such an organization, because if that organization doesn't give those opportunities, then why be there? And then there's the other thing, which is a really small thing, but I think it was really helpful in every day. First of all, is a whole conversation about tokenism. And it's great to have one woman in the room, but is one woman in the room enough to really be able to champion women? Because at the end of the day, you're also trying to be that woman, but also maybe can nobody notice that I am one, because maybe that's going to set me as a disadvantage. So I'm trying to really be mindful in meetings when I see that there is a woman saying something, or in an event, if people are raising their hands to ask questions, give the first question to a woman, or when a woman says something, back her up and say, oh, really well said, Rahel. So I think there is a lot of small everyday things that if they're part of the culture of the organization or from the team, they can just make people on that team feel better and more included. And I think everyone can be an ally in those everyday moments.
And it takes bravery as well, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. You get close to so many startups. You see what the good practices and bad practices are. And I think sometimes being in a large company like Google, we have the luxury of size, and we can devote resources to sitting down and thinking about structures and what do we want to do. But when you look at startups who are in a very different phase of development under a whole bunch of different pressures, what are the best ones doing that are really promoting diversity within their own workforces? How are they making sure that they're ending up with the type of diversity in their teams that are going to make them more successful?
So, I mean, I'll go back to the thing that I just said. A big part of it is so much easier to believe that a company is going to be supportive of women if there is female representation in the C-suite. And it's not particularly encouraging when we look at the data. And in 2019, in this country, 92% of all VC money went to all male teams. If any of you are hearing this fact for the first time, I will repeat this because it's shocking. 92% of all money, that's 92 pounds of every 100 pounds invested by VCs in this country, went to all male teams. Now, obviously, when I look at a company like this, I'm sort of wondering, would this organization be very supportive of women? So making sure that there is representation at the upper echelon is very important. A lot of that is about culture building. So from my own experience of building startups, I will admit, I've always found companies with men, but as soon as there was an opportunity to hire, we had the luxury of money to hire. 2 years ago, I said to my co-founder when we were hiring our first junior developer, it's like, I don't care what you're going to do. You're not going to hire a straight white man into this role, because it's an opportunity to create, first of all, to have that first woman so that we can attract more. Second of all, for them to learn directly from you. You're an experienced CTO. What a great opportunity. By the way, fun fact, I then posted that I'm looking for diverse pipeline on Facebook. I know we don't use the F word here, but this story gets better. I posted that I want to get access to diverse pipeline because I want to hire a junior developer. I got banned from Facebook for hate speech. And I then contested that, and they still said that excluding white men is hate speech. So yes, there's definitely, in successful startups, I think really start in the very early stage. Who's your investor? Who's on your board? Who's in your C-suite? Who's the first hire that can really set you up for success later?
Great, thanks. Now, one of the catchphrases that we have at Google is that in God we trust, everyone else must bring data. And as an engineer, I knew this was the company for me. But as part of my ongoing education process as exec sponsor for Women At, Hannah presented me with a book called Invisible Women. Has anybody read this book? A few of you. So Invisible Women, written by a lady called Caroline Criado Perez, and it talks to the systematic absence of women in data sets over history. That history has effectively been written without the presence of females and the impacts on females of various things over time. And Shadi, I'm looking at you because I know that this has been very much a part of your journey. Can you share with us your story and what led you to setting up this amazing company that you now run?
So let's start by this first. Did you know that until 1993, women were excluded from drug discovery clinical trials? That's like, we literally had the iPhone probably then, but women were still being excluded.
That was the year I left university. That's how long ago that was.
There we go. So, and so even to date, only 30% of drugs are being developed on women, which is quite scary. So the medical, so this sort of had led the medical world to not understand female-related health issues, especially female hormones. So you would think the pill, which is being mass prescribed, 1 billion women use it globally, and it's not only prescribed for preventing pregnancy, but 50 plus different therapeutic areas, from polycystic ovary syndrome to endometriosis, pain, acne, and so on and so forth. You would think that it wouldn't have any side effects, but 52% experience side effects. So when I founded Pexi, this was a very personal sort of story and reason for me to find this company. At the time, I was working for a biomedical engineering company and studying health tech and management. And then halfway through my studies, I started having health problems. I was going bald. I literally couldn't digest water. And at some point, I got diagnosed with bowel cancer. Fortunately, this was a misdiagnosis. And all the doctors were saying, this is stress. You are too stressed. You're working, you're studying, do yoga, do meditation, blah, blah, blah. And it will go away. And I was like, I can't eat. I can't digest water. What are you talking about? So anyways, I said, you know what? Fine. You guys are telling me it's stress. I'm going to research the hell out of stress. I'm going to write my dissertation on myself. So I built a device that could measure cortisol levels, won an award for it at UCL, measured everything that I could in my body. And it turns out it's not stress. My cortisol levels were absolutely fine. So anyways, I went back to the research papers that I was studying, and I found a paper linking cortisol with female sex hormones, which is estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So I went to a world-renowned stress professor and I said, what are your thoughts on, the link between cortisol and female sex hormones? And he literally looked at me and said, we don't look at it. It decreases statistical power. So if I were you, I wouldn't have looked at it either. And I'm like, dude, you don't know that I'm looking at this, to cure myself. Anyways, I did not take that to heart. I then enrolled in a master's in endocrinology in the hopes that medicine has better answers for me. I got to the reproductive module only to learn about deadly diseases, which again, not a bad thing, but nothing about what do actually female hormones do. So I went back to the research papers, and I felt at that time I was reading like 100,000 different research papers. I finally figured out that I have a rare hormone imbalance, that it impacts the way that I metabolize things. But because I didn't fall into a category that the medical system wanted to categorize me at, they couldn't figure out what's going on. So anyways, I went to my GP. I said, this is what's happening. This is the drug I should take. She literally spit in my face. I was like, no way in hell I'm going to prescribe this to you. So anyways, I knew a doctor in Germany who was a scientist. So this is very important. Science and medicine are very sort of separated. And so I went to him and I said, these are my findings. This are the studies. This is the drug. And he was like, you're absolutely right. This drug will become mainstream. But for now, cut it in half. And like, take this and do this. So anyways, I came back to London and I was like, I'm getting this prescribed anyways. You might as well prescribe it for me. So I got the drug prescribed and I'm taking it since every day. And now the drug is actually mainstream. And so the reason, yes. So really the reason for building Pexi is to say, whole world, can you just listen to, when you want to look at women's health, look at their female hormones first and then identify what's going on and then move forward. So it's to debunk that sort of whole myth around what female hormones do and the importance of them. And that's why Pexi was built.
Amazing. And maybe tell us a little bit more about where Pexi is at right now and what are the big innovations you're working on next?
So we've essentially built an algorithm that can understand the predispositions every woman sort of experiences, from her genetic profile, from her hormone levels, what is exactly going on, what is your current body telling you what's happening, and what are the best routes forward for you to optimize your well-being. And so we're working on developing a test that could measure hormones continuously. We're working on an algorithm that can obviously be smarter and smarter the more that you use it. And we're right now closing our funding round, and we will be doing a trial with Stanford, fingers crossed. Again, thanks to Marta, we were sent to San Francisco. So that's how the team, very true. Mimi's here. She's the best. So yes, we are sort of moving forward quite,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Rahel, the mission to make black hair and beauty simple sounds like it's something that burns deep inside you and that you've got a story behind it that brought you to creating this company. Do you want to share a little bit more about that and talk about the inclusivity mission that you've got at the company?
I'll share some of my experiences that actually led me to create FroHub. Working in various different companies in London, 100+ staff, most of the times I was the only black person in the company. Either the only or, one of few. And I mean, again, growing up in Sweden, that's fine. There aren't many black people around here. That is not okay. I used to keep my hair not like this. It was dead straight, to actually try to fit in a bit more because, as a black person, I'm already sticking out. But I was straightening it so much that eventually it just started breaking. And I had to stop straightening it, and I had to, rock my just natural hair. And I remember feeling super scared going into work one day with my hair out like this, thinking, oh my God, what are people actually going to say? I received, mixed reactions. Some were very nice, positive. I received lots of microaggressions from my white female boss, saying that she preferred me in my straight hair. I looked better in my straight hair. And, actually even made jokes about my afro hair. This is real. These are real situations here. And, I didn't really have an ally to, stand up for me at that point. I mean, other people heard this, but no one said anything. So after, having these experiences and then also hearing, lots of, just widespread global discrimination about black hairstyles in the news, Just last month, there was a girl here in London getting sent back home from school because she was wearing her afro hair. The month before, this kid in the US was banned from his high school graduation because of wearing his dreads. There was a news anchor who, was told that her black hairstyles were actually unprofessional and she should not be wearing it, and she got fired. And I mean, these are just some of the things that actually make the news. There's so much that actually don't even get into the news. I remember going in with my sister to a high street hair salon. She wanted to get her haircuts. Just walking in, within 5 seconds, they just looked at us and they said, "Oh, we don't do your hair here." Just that. We just walked out. We said nothing. And I remember feeling really just humiliated, and I also felt sad. And then last year, this very big beauty booking platform that I'm sure most of you guys know about, they just, I spoke to a C-level exec from there, and, he just admitted, though, yeah, we don't really do black hair. And, these experiences, I think just made me a little bit more woke in terms of my, reality as a black woman, and especially when it comes to my hair. I usually tell my Vietnam story, which these ladies know about now, as to kind of the final straw that really made me create this platform. I'll tell it very fast. So I was going to Vietnam, a country that's quite humid. My hair does not tolerate that, so I needed to get my hair braided before I went. Spent hours searching on Instagram for someone who could do my hair, was located near me, was available. Couldn't find anyone. Asked my sister for help. She asked her friend for help. The friend gave me a phone number. I ended up going across London to this woman's house, and she was doing my hair whilst eating food. And when I say eating food, she was actually touching the food with her hands and then touching my hair. And kids were, running around. And I was just thinking, oh my God, I've spent so much money on this, and I'm unhappy with the results. And I'm unhappy with the whole just experience itself. And when you consider that black women actually spend 6 times more on their hair than any other ethnicity, you just wonder, why is it so underserved? Why is this market so fragmented? And, at that point, I just thought, let me do something about it. And I created ProHub, which is, our mission is to make it easy for Afro and curly-haired women to find a hairstylist that can actually cater to their needs. In terms of, our team is very, we are very diverse. We're we look like an advert for the United Color of Benetton. Seriously. Diversity in, ethnicity background, super important, but also diversity in thought, and I think that has made us just a stronger team. And I think, when it comes to allyship, speak up. If you see bias, speak up. But also, don't hijack. So let me just tell you a quick story about that. I spoke at a panel recently, and it was also a women's event, pretty much as, large as this, if not larger. There was one black woman in the audience. After the event, I had this woman come up to me, a white female, and she just said, what you're building, I feel excluded. I was like, huh? That was the first time I've heard it. So I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, you have so many other, booking apps that you can use. And she just kept going on about, no, I feel excluded. You're doing this for black women. And I just said, you know what? If you want to get box braids done, or if you want to get a lace front wig done, just go on frohub.com and book yourself fabulous. We don't exclude you. So don't hijack.
Congratulations. That's a great story. And what stage is the company at now?
So we've launched, we're taking bookings, and we are really kind of trying to listen to our customers, both our, end customers and also hairstylists, get their feedback, trying to improve the platform for them, and, just kind of like recruiting more hairstylists onto the platform. And we are about to embark on our fundraising journey.
Great. Marta, we had the McKinsey report, I think you mentioned it earlier on, just released. It looks like we're making some progress. I think if we've been running International Women's Day for 110 years and we still haven't fixed the problem, there's a lot more to be done. You've got experience inside the huge corporate culture of Google as well as being a very successful entrepreneur. What do we need to do? Like, if you had a magic wand to fix the representation that we see at every level in our own company as well as in the ones you work with, like, what would you change? What would you fix? What do we need to do?
And thank you for that question, especially knowing that you're actually the man that can do something about it. Isn't it nice to sit with decision makers in the room? So I feel that there's something that is missing out of the discussion that we've had until now, which is that I think none of us are mothers. And I had a very inspiring conversation with two of the founders that just joined our last cohort of women founders residency. And I think that it was fundamentally a conversation about lifestyle and what's aspirational and what we promote as the goal. So it sort of starts with what Shardy mentioned. We raise our boys to be brave and our girls to be perfect. And sort of from that comes some of the aspirations of, I want to have a particular life and a particular lifestyle. But also very many of us aspire to have a family. And this sort of generally kicks in when you're whatever, late 20s, early 30s. And this is generally at this point when it gets really interesting. You're sort of, you probably have just under 10 years under your belt. You're doing really well. You're growing really fast. And the fact that you'd have to choose between one or the other is, I presume, one of the reasons why some women wouldn't want to pursue that in the first place, or would not be able to come back, or it wouldn't be acceptable by their peers, by their bosses, quite often also by other women, which is not the blame on the women. The blame is on the patriarchy, if you ask me, because patriarchy is bad for both men and women. But I think if we could de-risk or if we could take the stigma away from wanting to be successful as well as have a life, to actually enjoy spending time with your partner, to have a hobby, to like traveling. I think if we could, at the very human level, if we could really think about how to build our work lives around the fact that we're also human, and it might be that it's a Wednesday and it's midday and your kids, again, I'm quoting a wonderful founder that I spoke with today. If it's midday on Wednesday, you need to pick up your kids from school. That doesn't mean that you're not gonna kick the hell out of the asses of people at work and do an amazing job. It's just a shift in paradigm. And the current paradigm of work has been built around men and by men that can afford to work 50 hours and be in the office all the time because there's somebody else taking care of the children. I think if we think about switching that paradigm, that's going to be very, very powerful. And by the way, check out Kinfo, a platform for recommendations for parents. And this, the mother example is from the founder.
Great, thank you. I want to give the audience a chance to ask one or two questions. We're not going to have a huge amount of time, but if you do have a question, throw up your hand. We'll get you a microphone so that you can ask the audience, or you can ask the panel. We have one already down the back. Let's go. Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to ask some advice about recruitment and recruiting a more diverse workforce, especially from the stat around the females need to be able to do 100% of the CV before they'll apply. So how do we attract and motivate more women to apply for those jobs with only 60% of the skills? And any tips on groups or where we should be launching our messages and what we should be saying for women in tech to come forward and grow the talent pool?
Excellent question. Another shout out to another startup that we've worked with, a company called Applied, led by very brilliant Kate Glazebrook, it's a spin-off from the behavioral insights team, and she's done a lot of work understanding. First, by the way, I just heard that Rich Keelty used Applied to post a job for Google a couple of weeks ago and said it completely changed the inclusivity and women were more interested in applying. Basically, it's about debiasing job adverts and making sure that they look more attractive to women. And it can even be, it's sort of simple things like if you say, it is a hardworking, driven environment in which we work hard and party hard, whatever, probably some startup has written that. Or something that be more focused on collaboration and learning and support. It's sort of sometimes the language is quite gendered as well. So she sort of starts from there. I think a big part of that is having access to the right pipelines, and frankly, this just takes work. Generally, putting an advert into the world will likely mean that recruiters will likely have networks of mostly men, because those are the networks that had been building for a very long time. Probably the sites would be frequented also by a certain type of people. So there's probably a role. I really wish I had the silver bullet. I don't. I believe that there is something about starting with the job advert and thinking about that. I believe that there is something about, I can imagine at Google, when you see, I guess we don't really have this problem to that same extent, but even seeing that there'll be people on your team that are female, probably if there is a way of presenting adverts in which it's clear that there's going to be a diverse team that they'll be working with, this is something that's aspirational. And then we are also amazing networks. We have great recommendations. I think if everyone after this event thought about a couple of people that they think are maybe in a funny place in their life, maybe want to switch careers. I think we don't think enough about career switching. There are so many transferable skills that we can apply from one industry to another, and also for us to actively be thinking about who are the people in our networks that we can bring in, or who is that really talented 17-year-old, the cousin or the younger daughter of somebody who maybe is just at this point considering where she wants to go. I think maybe these are some of the tactics we can apply.
I'm going to ask Lauren, who was my staffing partner up until she abandoned me for greener fields. I mean, you've been working hard on this with me in particular. What are some of the tips and tricks you might share?
I knew this was coming. I think to directly follow up from the question, the point about the job requirements is crucial. And so something that we've done in Ronan's organization and we do more widely at Google is removing a lot of those qualifications and running every job description that we have through a tool that removes that gender biasing language in an attempt to make them more accessible to diverse candidate pipelines.
Yeah. One other thing I would add is we realized that by asking people who are of a particular socioeconomic background for referrals, which is a major source of talent for us, you get people from the same socioeconomic background. So you actually have to go and work hard to create relationships with the communities and the groups of people who you want to attract into your organization that may be underrepresented at the moment. And figuring out how to do that isn't trivial either, but it's worth doing. Any other questions from our audience? We'll take one or two more. And then I've got one last question for the panel before we wrap up.
So mine's not actually a question, it's just a bit of sharing case study. So I think you mentioned the challenge of women having to choose between work and starting a family. I mean, I'm a mum of 3 and I've kind of been down that dilemma. But what I want to share is Vodafone is a really good case study. So my sister works for Vodafone and she's been on my case, where I think they've got this new program they're starting, which is Get Back to Work. And it's recognition for women who have taken a career break of 10 or 15 years because they've been nurturing and raising a family, but actually still have those skill sets. And it's kind of gently getting them back into the workforce by kind of, working on their confidence level and kind of easing them back into it. So that's probably something, I can see you're all nodding your head, so you're clearly very familiar with it. My sister's kind of raves on about it. She's a big fan, a big ambassador of it. And just going back to, your point about, as having been through the journey of being a mum and working, and I think you're right, that there are a lot of challenges where I've had to kind of fight my corner in personal appraisals, where actually demonstrating that whilst perhaps I wasn't there at 3 o'clock because I had my kids' parents' evening or a concert, whatever, but actually the targets are achieved, but it's having to fight that much harder, and it shouldn't be the case. I mean, I remember one situation where I had to be off for 2 weeks, work from home 2 weeks, because my youngest had chicken pox, and my husband was in Dubai with his children, with the rest of my children, and, I was in a predicament where actually I couldn't pass the childcare to anyone else. And it was actually horrible, the fact that it was brought up against me, despite the fact of having 100% record of always being in the office. But unfortunately, it is the world that we live in. And it's, as you say, it's fighting 10 times harder.
Can I just say quickly, I want to quote again the founder of Kinfo, who told me today that she went to an MD once who hired her and said, "I love that you're a mother. I love hiring mothers because mothers are so organized. If you want to raise a family and run a home and deliver at work, you're not going to waste any time. You're just going to bang out the work as well as you can, because then you know that there are other priorities as well." And I think there is something just about us evangelizing that message. So thank you.
We'll take a last question over here.
I wanted to, I don't know if it's a statement or a question, it's a mixture of two. I'm really actually quite moved by what Rael was saying about being the only one. And I love the fact that you started this. I kind of think I'm directing it at Marta and Rael. The concept of being the only one is clearly across the board in every field that we go into as black women. What can we do? Because the idea of your sister leaving her job, where I've worked, I'm the only black woman there. I don't think I've actually worked in any place where I've actually been any other black people. I've got 2 kids who are in private school, and they're the only black kids in that school. And it's really odd to find that they have faced, they're 8 and 10, and they've faced bias to the point where my daughter, being the only black girl, one of her teachers has actually tried to do something to bring culture. And they were saying, oh, let's do, because we're from Nigeria, she said, let's do a Nigerian day for Languages Day. And this actually happened yesterday. And they said, oh, we don't know anything about Nigeria. And somebody posted something in the parents group and said, oh, well, I don't want my kids wearing that. And posted a picture of the outfit, the Nigerian outfit. And I literally, I was like, I don't know how to address it. They said, oh, well, they were backing up really quickly, saying, oh, I'm sure they look nice. Let's ask Gina how she feels, that maybe she might have ideas. So I've actually not replied to that, but it's scary to think that this is happening no matter where we go. And I don't know whether it's leaving the workforce is going to help, because you can go anywhere else, you're still going to face the same problems. Doing things like you're doing, but I wanted to say, this is the question, is the issue is there. I'm trying to do something by setting up something, because I've tried to look into startups and I never see, I'm sorry if I'm rambling, I rarely see black women in startups. I see a lot of, whenever you see team pictures, very rarely will I see a black person, let alone a black woman. And when you think of the figure where you're getting 90-something% of VC funds are going to mostly white male, what if that percentage is even going to any black person? What can we do about it? And what is Google doing about it? And how are you feeling being in the startup world? What have you faced? So 2 questions for both of you.
I think when it comes to kind of, the workforce, I think managers, leadership, they should be responsible for delivering measurable diversity outcomes. And, it should be built into their performance objectives. And I also think they should be, their competencies should be developed as an inclusive leader. I think when it comes to startups, allyship, for example, should, I think, be baked into the fabric of the startup. It's not something that should be thought about, when the company is very, big. Yeah, I guess in many situations when it comes to, startups, going to these, various events, fundraising events, whatever, I am often the only, either the only black person or one of you. I think it's important for us to kind of claim our seats at the table and, show that we are here as well. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with, my sister quitting last week. However, it was, she faced a tough time, and it was taking, like her mental health was not good, and she had to go. She had to leave. She didn't have any kind of allies. About what you said about, the Nigerian outfits, I had something similar actually when I worked in one of these companies, again, the only black person, and I remember my team, I wanted to introduce them to Eritrean food. So I'm originally from Eritrea. And my boss wanted to invite this other guy that had been, supporting and working our team, a white South African guy. And he just commented, he said, oh, do they even eat food in that? Do they even have food in that country? I was like, yeah, I mean, these are the things. This is reality, and I just, and everyone went quiet. No one said anything. No one just said, what the hell, man? Like, that's not cool. But I just said, you know what? You're not invited. I was just like, don't come for dinner. Yeah.
Big
Thank you. And I mean, both of these stories just remind us of allyship. Like, I'm really sorry this is happening to you, but it shouldn't be on you to only be the ones that are standing up for yourselves and being like Nigerian outfit or Eritrean food is good. There should be, where were all the white people? Where are all the other people that should have said, again, what the fuck, man? And I think this is really important that it's just, there is this incredible quote, I never remember who it's from, but it's related to the Second World War, and it goes something along the lines of, first they came for the black people and they took them away. Then they came for the Jewish people and took them away. Then they came for the other people and took them away. And then they came for me and nobody was there to stop them. So sort of, if we're not stopping what's happening to people that are different than us, but it's an injustice, then how, I mean, it's still this whole idea of treat others like you yourself wish to be treated. And I think, and I will say this, and I think calling out is not always, I've been told I'm aggressive before, but it is very convenient, especially for women. I was sort of want to specifically speak to white women. It is hard enough. It is hard for us as well. But then once we're on the inside, we're generally like the second best in some sense. And it's already tricky. So it's sometimes hard to put yourself in the position when I'm, okay, phew, I got here. Life is good. Like, I just want this to continue. And it is difficult and it requires bravery and it isn't pleasant and it isn't nice to stick your head out. And it doesn't mean that it's obvious and that we should punish women that don't do it or build monuments for those that do. But I really think it's on us. 50 years ago, there were no rights in the workplace for women. We got to a place where it's a little bit better for white women. Now it's really on us to champion and be allies to make sure that that our women of color have the same access that we have been granted. And I think it's really on us.
Yeah, here. So last question from me. You've spoken about the importance of allies, being allies as well as having allies as you go on your journey. We've got so many business owners and budding entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs in the room. Any tips for finding allies? How do you find the ally, whether it's in work or outside of work, to help you in those moments?
How to find allies. I think, again, I don't really know how to find allies. I would just say, an ally should themselves kind of just, be, if you're a passive ally, I will not know that you're there. But if you're active, actually, speak up, then I will know that you're there. And I'll, again, tell you a little very short story from my life. And so basically, I grew up in Sweden, like I told you guys. I came there as, 4-year-old refugee. When I was about 9 years old, after a sports activity day in the girls' locker room, I got called the N-word for the first time in my life. And, I ran home in tears, crying. The next day, walking into school, I really did not want to go to school. I was just, hating every bit of it. As I approached the school, there's this little hill in the school kind of courtyard. I saw lots of kids stood up on the hill, jumping up and down. And I was like, what the hell are they doing? So I walked closer, and they're kind of shouting my name. And as I walked closer, they're championing me. They were saying these amazing words, supportive words. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I walk in. They come down, running down, hugging me. And I was like, oh, wow. These kids, they could have just ignored what happened the day before. They could have just, said nothing. But they actually fought for me. They were in my corner. They backed me up. And it was beautiful, like thinking back about it now, I was just thinking, wow, that was my earliest, memory of allyship. Yeah, so I think it's, in order to be an ally, all I can say is just all of us, have the responsibility to kind of foster inclusivity in our, in the culture. And we can all be allies, but it's very important that we're active. And you cannot be a passive ally. You cannot just say, "Hey, I'm fighting for this and that." I think an example of a great ally is actually this lady over here. She's and her team, of course. No, seriously, they're so amazing. They're so supportive, and I feel also that they actually take action. They're not just shouting about it, but they're actually championing all of us. Whether we're white, whether we're black, whether we're this, whether we're that. I think you can follow her Twitter account to really see that what she's always talking about, she's always shouting about it, and I'm in love with it. I'm just like always checking, liking, retweeting, and so on.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm getting the nod that we are out of time. Let me just wrap up by saying that the theme is each for equal. I think today we've heard some really inspiring stories of what it means to be a great ally, to celebrate difference and to work really hard to lift each other up and celebrate that difference. If we can all do that, I think that will make us each successful allies. Thank you all so much. Rahel, Marta and Shadi, thank you so much.
Amazing.
And
Thank you.
I will be cheeky. I will have the last word, and I will say you should be, those of you that work at Google, you asked what does Google do. I think you should be proud to work here, because the fact that this organization is giving us time and headcount and money to be able to run programs like this, to support these entrepreneurs, our new cohort. We always care about representation of diversity in the cohorts, be it a cohort only for women or for general startups. It's a privilege to be in this organization, to be able to lead this particular team. So you should be proud, and also you're all very welcome back to campus.
Thank you.
I'm very quickly going to hand it over to Claire, who's going to lead us in a fun round of inclusivity bingo.